So I was listening to Clubhouse this morning, and the topic was love and its many manifestations in the Emotion Club room, or a room in the Emotion Club. And you and I have been talking about dipping a toe into unity logic in different ways. And one way is just to take one of the key states, one of the states that is this sort of ordinary state that unity logic then transforms through its relational meaning, and how we might talk about that word, which is an ordinary word, in this case, love, and put it in the context of the unity logic, but also how it connects to people's direct experience. And love is a complicated one, but it's certainly familiar enough, and people have a lot invested in it. So it's going to be powerful.
Yeah, love is an interesting one because it's complex and complicated, but then at the same time, it's also like kind of simple in a way. And then also it's very universal. Like some people can sort of define everything in the context of love, or at least everything good. And so, yeah, so it's kind of fun because everyone has a slightly different sort of idea of what love is. And then in the context of unity logic, it's super interesting. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, my way to start would be like, since you have framed it in a sort of a more, I guess, like specific sort of framework, maybe you kick it off and explain what love is in the context of unity logic.
All right. I just want to acknowledge too, you said it's a love is actually itself a framework for a lot of people in the way they relate to the world. They say it's all love. So I find that an interesting parallel to something like unity logic, which is, itself intended to be a unifying framework. So interesting parallel, and I appreciate that you brought it up. It also ties in directly to the participatory, like how we're all being connected and all being able to relate itself could be seen as a field of love, connectedness, responsiveness, and while we sometimes stumble into that, sometimes we're able to step into it intentionally. There's always a sense that it's there, which is where that bigger goal, I think, of unity logic is, how do we move from, we live in an increasingly complex world, things are falling apart at the seams, and yet we do have some pretty amazing tools. How are we going to get all this to come together to actually, let's find the way to love more, to be connected more, to, like, if we can't do that, why the hell are we even, trying for the goggles, or trying for the implants, or trying, or whatever it is. So thank you for the invitation too. I'll maybe share a screen. And what I thought of bringing up is an older reference that I have that ties in. It's essentially the unity logic framework through a WordPress plugin that essentially makes clickable links. And okay, I'm doing too many things at once. Let me just get the screen shared and then I can speak again. Okay.
I love this little tool.
Good. It's nice. It's something that I developed about 4 years ago, and really I use it. It's very text. It's obviously all text based, which is not necessarily a universally easy format to explore it in. I find it works for me. But the tool pulls up these relational statements, or the plugin, the app. So there's 2 boxes here, and within the box on the left, there's actually a second tab. So moving between relationship statements, which refer to the relationships among the states, or the words which are pointing to certain experiential states of being. That's what that relationship tab means. And then meta, which is the forest, looking at the forest view of what it is, in this case, love. And then box on the right is my attempt to essentially use words to weave together all those different relationship, those states of being. So I will start reading this and see how far I get, because I think it's interesting perhaps to just it's a little bit of a bitter pill when we take something wonderful like love and we think about it in these relational terms. It can feel almost
diminishing.
Yeah, like diminishing. Yeah, because it takes out all of the fluffy stuff and all of the those different sort of nuanced parts of it, which it's not, the intention is not to diminish it, but rather to point to its essence. What at its essence is happening. So I'm going to read this about love, and then we'll maybe have more to say about that. Love emerges from the need to respond with sameness. Another word for that would be like commonality and participation. As a vessel within all, the need for self to express wonder so as to enter with grace, harmonically, this motivation to connect with others, even with objects. When love expands, longing is experienced. When maintained, love flows into initiative. The urge to hold on to longing or resist shifting into initiative habituates held love into patterns of closeness. Closeness patterns generate hunger for embedded experiences of objective self. This includes astral content, such as dreaminess, paranoia, and the challenges of chaos and awe in self and other. In other words, these are the things that are a little bit out of the scope and give an urge to be objectively bound to others by being close to them. Awareness of love reflects the universal need for self to experience commonality through grounding of self and to connect to others through intent. Love is the meaning independent vessel of rational other awareness. Together with justice and power, it generates achieving self, the source of greater good.
Really
So
cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. It's a lot though.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Have you ever read the what is it? It's in the Bible somewhere, like one of the chapters of the book of Corinthians. They go through like 4 or 5 paragraphs describing what love is.
Ah, yes.
And so, it's sort of in a similar, I guess, a similar intent to sort of define love more objectively, because I think that's what I got from reading that Bible chapter. And so,
Oh, I love that connection, because it's kind of a classic among people who have any exposure to Christian faith. Certainly classic, and yeah, to be a little more objective isn't always a bad thing. Like there's a sense of almost like creating a container for a variety of experiences of that thing. Because we can point to the things that we're experiencing about it, but how do we then, witness, create space for, create a container for other people's experiences or things that are outside of our own expectations of that. And yeah, so this, I'm glad you see it as maybe pointing to that, fulfilling that, in some fundamental way, I think is the other piece. And the fulfilling of it in a fundamental way, I would even say, isn't about these particular words, but about the structure underlying the unity logic, which has to do with this algorithmic way of understanding reality itself. So in other words, even if these words are hard or, it's easy to just to need to be in individual experience at a given moment. It doesn't diminish the fact that there is a container where we might be using unity logic to maybe solve a problem at work or inquire about a personal issue. And it's not necessary to dive in and only be in this big abstract definition, but to touch into that, into a point where it clicks. This is what I wasn't seeing before. I see it a little differently. And that's where the other piece of the app, which maybe I'll go back and just show. And it's not to promote the app. It's not something that I see everybody in the world using at this moment, but to show that it's not about memorizing a definition and being like ascribing to. It's that we start to look at the container that experience is, and a question that's on our heart, something that we're contemplating that's important. Because ultimately, if it doesn't have that role, there's no, it's all abstract. But let's say we're asking a question and saying, I'm confused about love, or I see something and I'm trying to understand where the love is. You can come in, and these tabs in relationship, you might look at it and go, there's something about justice with love, right? This is that I feel so much love for this person or this situation because there's been justice where it had been denied before. Like that's what's actually activating this sense of love. And so when you're in a tool like this or using the unity logic framework for whatever purpose, because there's so many different ways that it can potentially really be used, you can then navigate. You don't have to stay thinking about love because that is relationally connected to justice. And when you identify whatever it is you're inquiring about, or you're sharing a story, or investigating a problem with others, or trying to create a solution together, you can navigate through this. So from love, you can go to justice. And from justice, you can go to forgiveness. And this is the process that I see as, sort of a new part of love, in the sense of, we have this thing called unity logic. We have these states within it, and it's really limited because there's only 176. But when you see it relationally, it becomes something different, more expansive.
Yeah, it's it's really amazing. And so when you clicked on forgiveness, it's, of course, then one of the words underlined was retribution. Should be like sort of like an antonym, but like it's this idea that it's like you can go through the connected web and back around again and like, keep seeing different things. But yeah, in the context of love, I think there's so much there in that, on the in the love tab that I'd like to sort of explore more. And I think you were speaking before about you know, to create like sort of an objective concept or definition or explanation of what love is, and how like that can sort of, take the fluffiness out. But I think, so sometimes we're looking to maintain the fluffiness, but other times, like, for example, I've lived amongst hippies, even on a hippie commune once, and we had quarterly meetings there. And I remember one of the quarterly meetings, we were trying to decide like really specific technical concept of how much money to spend on repairing the school building. And like people had different opinions, and one person rose their hand and they simply said, well, all you need is love. And it's like in the context of everyone, talking about all these different considerations that are more specific and money oriented and all that. And like, she was right. But then it's like, I think for most people, the impetus is to want to unpack that. Okay, all you need is love. Okay, just like the Beatles said or whatever. But like, what does that actually mean? How do I implement that in my life? How do I, go about actually doing that? And then that's then where the tool that you just showed on the screen is somewhat useful, because you could at least start to sort of unpack the concept of like what love is, and then also how it connects to other really core concepts that, we all consciously or unconsciously are interacting with, like justice and power and forgiveness and all this kind of stuff. So
Thanks. So one of the more surprising ones is power. And in that context, that would have been really amazing to go, I hear you. Where are we going to where is this power to give this project its lift? Where do you see that? And so putting it back on the person instead of it, I just and I don't think the intent of it wasn't her intent to derail things, but yeah, figuring out how to make space and connect all those dots is really amazing, because it keeps everyone back involved. Like, we don't lose anybody. We can get back in and say, okay, yeah, love. Well, we're talking about money, and we can see that connects to power. Can you, see it in those terms, and maybe that ignites your passion, and and then you kind of pulled it back in. So I think I'll pull up the screen one more time. I have about 10 more minutes, and because it sounded like you might have some questions and kind of ways to reflect on that, which I appreciate. And I'm gonna see about the back button. Oh, it does work now. That's
nice. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where to start exactly. But I think the second paragraph here, I wasn't exactly clear totally, but I think it's connected to the short form over in the box, which says to limit outside context, love pursues closeness.
Yeah, it's a little bit more. The first paragraph is a more expansive view, or like inviting newness and novelty and expansiveness. The second paragraph is pointing towards why we get into patterns about love, like whatever. So I'm speaking generally, so this would be true for all of the states in unity logic. And so there would be a statement of it, which is an expansive statement, and then that second one is almost like a restrictive or a patterning, and how that happens. And then it also bridges. I think the part that maybe gets a little confusing is that it goes from the patterns to bridging to the meta concepts, because I've jumped from closeness and hunger for embedded experiences, which is something that is maybe a new term for most people, and then objective self. So that is a leap from the relationship to the meta. So I think that's probably where that was a bit of a a jump. And the part about closeness and habituating is again about patterning, because love is not always a healthy thing or something that we want to hold on to in its exact form, right? There needs to be change. But the reason it gets into patterns, it has to do with closeness, and then also this meta experience, wanting to objectively see myself objectively. So instead of seeing myself, because when you're falling in love, you lose all your boundaries. There's a sense of like, I am everything and I love everything and I do, I'm one with everything, right? And that can only last so long before there's a core part of you that says, okay, I need to like check in about what I need, how I am. So that could be in that realm of objective self, which again is almost like, once you have the love, what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to pattern that into an objective view of yourself and of your immediate relationships? Does that kind of?
Yes, totally. Also, what's bringing up for me is like, why do we tend to, or say sometimes that maybe we love some people more than others, not that we're trying to exclude or anything like that, but like, whereas the first is expansive, and like, even though you might be like super in love with one individual or one group or one object, you're feeling like, you're not like comparing, you're sort of like feeling, oh, I'm in love with everything. But then like, other times your focus is like, more. And then, but even within that, yeah, like this state of expansive euphoria, and then there's going to be some event that occurs, and either it will be like an internal stimulus or an external stimulus that sort of reminds you, okay, I'm not, maybe it gets back to power here a little bit. I'm not powerful enough to just open myself up to everything in the world, like completely defenselessly, because that's what the expansive version of love sort of like makes you feel like being and doing. And so like, whether you realize like, oh, I can't just like spend all my money on dates together with this person I love, because I'll run out and then I'll be living on the streets, or like, well, like this first month has been magical and I haven't been able to defend myself at all, but now this person just like yelled at me or cursed at me, and so now I'm feeling like I have to, redefine my objective self in the context of what I thought was this like infinite love or whatever.
Yeah. So it's a there's the state of being, and then there's the fact that we're connected, that because unity logic does really point to the collective experience. Like, things make sense. We all understand on some level what love is, that we can talk about love and we share a common understanding of that, but our individual experiences in the moment and historically through time, right, give us, we need something to be able to orient to for our own communication, to effectively communicate, to get what we need, to be present in a way that's effective. And that's where understanding the relationships among these different states, what I assert and what I think time will bear out is that this gives a more, we can respond instead of reacting when we have a little bit of a framework of understanding the states of being, because we're going to understand where we need to pivot into if we want to pattern things, or if we want something new. And the other person, we can also, if we're aware enough and going through that process with them, we can help them see, well, that's where you are, but what if you look at it a little differently? And those kinds of shifts are already happening. That's the other piece, is this is not really pointing to anything new, but being able to name it and be yeah, I don't know. Can you think of a way? And it's not like grounding in the words. It's just Yeah, I can't quite put a finger on it, how to express it. It feels really important.
You mean how, like, so all these different concepts, love, justice, power, that are in this tool, like
Mhm.
how, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think creating, like, I think the ability
The
to,
dynamic, like the dynamic of it being, because unity logic is a thing. It's a way of being objectively involved in reflection for ourselves and then applying that to certain situations. And yeah, I'm sorry, I
yeah,
interrupted because
no,
I could see how
yeah.
unclear I was being.
No, I mean, it's fairly clear. I think, yeah, you just didn't get that last part, which is, I think, yeah, I can't speak for everyone, but I think it's nice to have like a sort of it's like a map, right? So like,
Mm.
a map of the earth, like if you were navigating around the earth, it's nice to know where everything is. I mean, of course, back in the day, people had to do it without like maps, but yet even still, that there was some navigational tools that they had where they looked at the stars and knew roughly where they're going. But yeah, so if
That
you
is an
have,
amazing metaphor.
yeah, so
I
I
love that.
so I think it's like that. And so like,
Mhm.
and the better you understand the map, the better you're able to sort of navigate around. And also like, if conflicts come up in conversation, you can refer to the map, and not that everyone would agree on everything, but at least
Right.
you have like sort of a
What route you
central,
take?
yeah,
Well, you might go this way,
yeah,
you might go that way, but we know we're going there.
yeah,
Mm, I'm
there you go.
so into that. That feels like a great place to wrap because I do have a thing I have to get to, and um, I feel yeah, yeah, so
Yeah, well, it
much.
really great. Yeah, it feels like we could do a 10-part series on love, but we'll decide what we go on to next. And
I know, I look forward to seeing all the different, hearing all the different examples. You're so great at coming up with sort of pointing to people's experience and examples of how all this rich experiential context, really comes into the fact that, we're communicating and relating to each other and trying to get things done and make a difference um, and, you know, nurture each other, nurture the planet. So, thank you. We'll be back on
yeah.
soon. Be well, Michael.